She had also said, I would never pose nude. I'm a Christian. I would never do that. I'm a good girl. That'd be against all of my beliefs. They thought, if we could find pictures that say otherwise, that would be interesting. Yeah, they found like 800 eventually. Who knows how many more were out there that they didn't find. At first, they couldn't find anything. They were digging and digging, and nobody knew Joyce McKinney because she was not known as Joyce McKinney when she was doing this work. She, of course, had one of her aliases. They start showing her picture to people, and they're like, oh, that's Joey. And they're like, okay, well, we can't find pictures of Joey. Oh, yeah, she's the one who always had that dog with her. But it was this thanks to the dog. They were able to track the dog down, and they found that the dog with Steve, buddy old Steve. He was like, why can't you find photos? Why don't you just go track down the advertisements that she placed? And they said, the what now? So they looked him up. And there were a lot of advertisements in this skeevy newspaper called The Freak. She was advertising. Imagine, it's there. And so thanks to that, and the fact that she always had her dog with her, they were able to dig up all of this stuff. Pictures that they could never print, but they could potentially describe on some small level. Down the road, she would claim that those pictures weren't her. They were photoshopped. I mean, look how flat that woman's chest is. It couldn't possibly be me. Now we know actually she'd had a boob job. The fact that was her reason, like what? Okay, Joyce, Joey, whatever you think you should be called. Why did she always have her dog with her? Turns out Steve was concerned for her safety. You know, an actual friend. How about that? Actual friend. She agreed to have a bug put into the dog's collar so that when she was on a job, he could hear everything that was happening and make sure she was safe. So that would be a disturbing thing to be listening to, especially if you're in love with her. Like, okay. She tried to take the dog with her to England, apparently, did not know all of the rules, and she had falsified paperwork even for the dog. So apparently when the dog arrived in England, they put it into quarantine and then shipped it back to Steve. So Steve still had the dog. She's into dogs. We'll get even more into that in just a little bit. She was very big on claiming that she was innocent. She did nothing wrong. Down the road, she would even say that the church had illegally bugged or wiretapped her phone. Why would the church even bother? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible. She also said that it was the FBI, and I'm like, this is a jail phone call, supposedly. Wouldn't have been the Scotland Yard or the CIA. Her stories don't make a whole lot of sense, as right now. After the Daily Express does their big, huge feature with her side of the story in Georgia, they're still with her for a while, and they have other disguises, including she and Keith dress up as nuns, because that's, again, not offensive. What? And the journalist said that Joyce treated Keith like almost like a slave. Of this domination thing was a common thread. Then when we get to the Daily Mirror doing the investigative journalism in California with Steve, they don't want Steve to be found by anyone else and scoop them. So they pay for him to hang out in Mexico for a while. And Steve, he still has his heart is out there for Joyce, and he doesn't want her mad that he's working with the media. They actually say, well, we'll pay so you can go visit her or attend the trial at least. And so he agrees largely on that point, but they want a picture of him, and he's like, oh, well, we can't do like a photo shoot because then she'll know that I'm cooperating and can't have that. So how about you take a picture that looks candid, like I'm surprised, like you're just following me. So that's what they did. They have a picture of him outside by a car. I think the dog might have been in it, and he's like, what? Totally staged. But that was so that she wouldn't get mad at him. Now, both papers, the Mirror and the Express, decide it's probably safe to publish these things. Doesn't sound like she'll be extradited. So if the charges are fully dropped or whatever, there's no trial, therefore we can't be held in contempt of some of these laws. So they go ahead and they have like several days worth of a story that they're going to print, and they print them very close to the same time. It gets leaked a little early, as often does, to one of her friends, who was still in England, and that friend calls her. Oh, and also while she was still in England, she's calling Steve collect. And that was incredibly expensive, by the way, like bonkers expensive back then. Telling her about what the Daily Mirror is about to print. Is she got the early version. And it's the pictures and everything that shows her that she is, quote, anything but the chaste, demure Mormon. She loses her ever-loving mind at that point. Journalists are still with her, and she's having a complete breakdown. She claims that she was clinging to these curtains and kind of broke some of them, and then she ran to the balcony and was going to jump off into the paparazzi, and then Keith stopped her because he said, "Don't let them win. The truth would die with you." And that's why she didn't jump. Sure, Joyce. Eventually, they get her to the hospital, the journalists do, and they tell some lie about how she has to get back to her convent. I guess she was still in her nun get-up disguise. They inject her with some sort of sedative and release her. And they go back to her hotel room with her in a wheelchair. After those big exposés were published, not much else happened for a while. She moved back home to North Carolina, lived with her parents, claimed to be writing a book and a screenplay about her experience, and also claimed that she had agoraphobia and like PTSD kind of thing. I don't think she called it that. Don't think that was really a term much of the time. Paparazzi were chasing her down. Later, she said the paparazzi were lined up outside her house for 33 years straight. And I call bull on that. Maybe weeks, couple months. Most of us have not heard of Joyce McKinney, so 33 years, BS. So a year after the exposés and after she's come back to the States, jumped bail, all of that, the FBI arrests her because she's falsified passports, but her sentence is suspended. She's found guilty, but that's it. There's no consequence. Things stay relatively quiet until 1984. At this point, Kirk is home from his mission, probably healed up from the trauma, hopefully healed up from the guilt or the shame that any of this caused. He's married and he has some kids by this point. He's living his life, hopefully thinking, okay, I finally have some peace. And then Joyce shows up and starts stalking him again. At this point, he is working at the Salt Lake International Airport, and she finds him and is taking photographs and logging his movements. He is like, this is disturbing. He calls the police. She is arrested. And they find photographs and the logs and all of that, as well as like some shackles in her car. But the case is dismissed. That makes me sad. Poor Kirk was he was victimized again and again and again. Like, why can't this woman ever be held accountable? Why can't he just live in peace? In the film, she also has to do just another dig. She was just glad to see that his wife wasn't pretty and thin, essentially. She uses derogatory terms instead of that, but she said, because that would have hurt. Lassie Joy. And she said it's just so sad to her that he was forced to marry and not for love. Maybe he finally found actual love. There's an idea. Maybe he found the happily ever after he always wanted. And it wasn't you, Joyce. It wasn't you. Once things kind of settled down, she did some interviews. You can find those where she says things like, I never did anything wrong. I don't know why people think I did. I never hurt Kirk. I never would. I love him. Yeah. She kind of goes off the radar for a while. In the film, she talks about kind of what led to her coming back into somewhat the media consciousness. And it's not what you think. A bull mastiff attacked her. And she says the reason, and I would love to have someone who's in veterinary medicine chime in on this because her story seems like absolute bull to me. But her version, she says this bull mastiff had had a bee sting and needed to have a steroid to bring down the reaction. And the people at the vet didn't like her personally. This was a vendetta against her, Joyce. So they added a 0 to the dosage. And so he got 10 times what he should have gotten. And that extra dosage burst the capillaries in this dog's brain, which made him aggressive and attack her. None of this is making sense to me. And she says he tore off her forearm, like amputated it, and tore out her intestines. So she was bleeding out. And then her pit bull saved her life by attacking the mastiff, and then got hurt as well. And then she and her pit bull healed together, and then her pit bull became like her service animal. Isn't that so sweet? And Anthony says that she has some scars on her arm from the attack, so the attack seems to have happened. I don't understand why a steroid could burst capillaries. Isn't it like a stroke? If there's blood vessels breaking, not suddenly get aggressive. I don't know. Anthony in his book says that her forearm had some shredding going on, not that it was amputated. That seems to make more sense to me. Then when that dog died, she was just so sad and so devastated. And my heart can go out to her for that. We kind of don't deserve our pets. In 2008, things get a little bizarre. She hears that there is a lab in Korea that is cloning dogs. So she signs up. And I think she sells her parents' house or something to finance it. I've seen various prices, that the original price was $150,000, or somewhere else it said $50,000. Eventually it was lowered to $25,000, basically giving her a discount if she would then help promote the lab. It sounds like the lab didn't last. A piece of Boomer sent on a plane to this lab. She says it was abdominal tissue. The book says it was an ear. Regardless, she sent part of Boomer, and she said that there was a little glowing orb inside the plane, traveling with it as it took off. And she knows that was Spirit Boomer. Okay, Joyce. Although by this point, she had dropped Joyce and was going by her middle name, Bernan. Maybe thinking that would help avoid too much people realizing who she was. But she had promised to do media to promote the lab. So as Bernan McKinney, she's doing appearances. And people are going, hold up. She's older, but it's clearly Joyce McKinney. Journalists would then say, are you Joyce McKinney of the case of the Manacled Mormon and Kirk Anderson in England from back in the 70s? And she goes, I am here to talk about my dog. She actually got 5 cloned puppies out of the deal, not just one. And she kept them all. They were all eventually taken from her for various reasons. She wasn't the greatest of owners. That's roughly when the film was going to be made. When she saw the film, she was not happy with it. She thought it was going to vindicate her, show her she was innocent. She was upset that it wasn't just her version. They showed way more of her side of the story than I would have expected. So she sued the filmmakers, the director and a couple of the producers, I believe, claiming intentional emotional trauma and libel and all that fun stuff. I read through a good chunk of the court case, and she even claimed things of like there were subliminal messages in the film. No, there were not. Okay, Joyce. Basically, she didn't have a case. She was just trying to get money out of them. She claimed all kinds of crazy things, like saying that when they tried to get her to sign the release, that one of the producers actually like pierced her hand with a pencil and said, sign it or your dog dies. And okay, fact check. The reality was this particular dog had actually attacked someone, and the government was looking at whether they needed to euthanize this dog because of that attack. And the dog was euthanized. Had nothing to do with the film. And she said that they had stolen all of her documents that could then prove her innocence. Fact check on that again. She claimed that they were stolen from her truck. The reality is that the filmmakers helped her digitize all of her documents and then gave her both the documents and like a DVD of all of the documents to her. In a minute, I'll actually play her reaction after the This is a film festival of documentaries in New York City, where it was played. And I'll show you a couple of clips of her. It's painful and hilarious. The lawsuit, it was finally thrown out, saying that there's no basis for it. She proved absolutely nothing, but also she had to prove even a higher level, and she proved nothing. But she had to prove a little more than she normally would have, because within the context of this case, she was a minor celebrity and therefore had to expect some lack of privacy in certain ways. But she showed absolutely no evidence of anything. And there you go. After the documentary was shown at this film festival, they brought her on stage very briefly. The idea was to answer a couple of questions before they had to release the room. As you could imagine, it didn't quite go as expected.
There's going to be a new world order and a theocracy reestablished, and they want to get their own president. Hello, Mitt. It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
That's not what we believe. Like, there is any sort of theocracy, it would be what most Christians believe, that at the second coming of Christ would reign upon the earth. And so he would be the head, and it would be a good government. Not Mitt Romney. No, not Mitt Romney.
That I had kidnapped and raped him. Folks, I have never been charged with raping a man. Hello. I've never been convicted of raping a man. In fact, it is criminal libel anyone who says that. I have never been charged with raping Kirk Anderson. In England, according to Hallsbury statutes, a woman can't even be charged with raping a man.
So, if you know true crime, if you follow true crime, you probably know this, but it's worth mentioning. Innocent people, they don't say, I've never been charged, I've never been convicted. And she says, I couldn't have been charged or convicted because that's not even a crime. It's impossible. She doesn't say, I didn't do it, because she knows she did it.
Says that I used a gun.
She is trying to say there's 5 versions that, like, the church has been telling of her story.
By 1984,
Joyce, I'm sorry, just because we have to let the room go before we get through all 5 versions, but we are very honored to have you with us tonight, and I think I can speak for many viewers of this film who find you a totally fascinating and charming character.
Well, I hope they don't think I'm an S&M hooker.
Which you were.
Imagine that.
Joyce, I know that I can speak for everyone in this audience to say that it makes my night, and I think it makes their night, to have you here with us. And thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Errol Morris, Joyce McKinney.
The audience members getting up to leave, but is she done? Oh, of course not. Joyce hasn't had her finish having her say.
On a stage with Joyce.
Read his Twitter page. Read the man's Twitter page. I think he's obsession. I think he's obsessed with me. Joyce is my favorite protagonist. Nobody even comes a close second.
Wait.
She needs the attention. She has to be the person, and she just won't stop. It's hilarious and painful to watch some of those. Let's just do a couple more really quick.
Prince, is that such a bad thing? Thank you. I love these people. I'm taking these people out to dinner in the 3rd row here.
Joyce.
There's so much I need to say. And
Said enough, Joyce. Just stop. So you can see the guy trying to get off the stage yet again.
I have a doctorate in film, by the way, guys. Does that shock you? I actually have an IQ above room temperature, too.
It's a lie. She didn't finish her doctorate. She began a doctorate in film. She did not finish it. But here's the last one.
And that guy, Peter Torrey, I met the guy one time.
Joyce, I think Booker's going to the bathroom on the stage, so I need to get him
Oh,
off.
he's going on Earl.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. It's a night to remember. Errol Morris, Joyce McKinney.
She hasn't changed one single bit, has she? She is a narcissist. She wants attention. She can do no wrong. She has so much to say, and she wants to be vindicated. After this, she began that lawsuit, which she lost. They were able to also show in the lawsuit that they treated her with respect. They brought her in, gave her makeup and hair and costuming. They paid her for the interview. They treated her well. And her response was to sue them and try to get money out of them, and it didn't work. So that sounded like that was going to be the end of the story. In 2011, she was reported to be working as a real estate agent. At some point, she made her way back to California, and I don't know if this was pre-film or post-film. In 2019, she was living in that truck. She was homeless, unhoused, however you want to phrase it. She'd spent all her money, I guess, getting those dogs, and at this point, she only had 2 of them left, and they lived with her in that truck. She had 2 warrants out for her arrest. One was for public nuisance for defecating in public, the other for battery because of some scuffle that she got into when she tried to take a shower at a gym. Don't know the details there. If all she was trying to do was take a shower, poor woman, let her take a shower. However, knowing what we know about her and how she is so self-centered and believes the world revolves around her, I would not be at all surprised if she threw a punch and then is playing the victim. And then on June 17th of 2019, there was a 91-year-old Holocaust survivor, immigrant, refugee from Ukraine, who was walking his dog across a crosswalk. And a white truck ran over him, stopped briefly, and kept going. He died. 91-year-old Gennady Bolotsky. And they didn't know who did it. At first, some video of the truck surfaced, and they tracked it down to Joyce. She got out of the truck to relieve herself, and then that's when they then arrested her, took her 2 other dogs that were still with her into custody. She was arrested then on June 21st of 2019 for the death of Gennady Bolotsky, for the hit and run, which is just absolutely heartbreaking that she has another victim, and it was this poor man's entire family. That they said he was so healthy, he would have lived to 100, and he had survived so many things. He had also been hit by a car before, like 15 years before, and had survived it until Joyce came along. So she was in jail, and then in April of 2020, there was a hearing where she was deemed by the judge to be incompetent to stand trial. Now, whether she actually was or she knew how to play the game, I don't know. Maybe she did have mental illness. I have no idea. But she was then being held and, in theory, treated to see if she could have her competency restored. There was supposed to be a hearing on August of 2020 to evaluate whether her competency to stand trial had been restored. And that's the last I have been able to find about the case. I don't know if that hearing happened, or if it was pushed off, or she was declared incompetent and another hearing was scheduled. I have no idea. I was unable to find anything else. But I certainly hope, for the sake of Bolotsky's family, that justice can be served there. So you can find links to that whole court case and situation also in the description. She still talks about how she's still writing her book and her screenplay, and she titled it A Very Special Love Story. The film opened with old video of her reading part of it, and it was gross and poorly written, as you can imagine, and the film ended with a little line that was so fitting. It's one of those moments where you go, do you hear yourself? Do you realize what you're saying, Joyce? So I'm going to read it. She says, like Narcissus, she's pining to death, dying of a broken heart. You know the story of Narcissus? Yeah, Joyce, that's fitting. That's very fitting. Because Joyce, you've been delusional your entire life, and you still are. And now with the hit and run, I would love to find out if anyone knows what happened with that. please let me know in the comments. Also, make sure you give this video a like, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell so you don't miss anything, and just even a like and a subscribe. Those really help the algorithm, help the channel so that other people will find it. Drop some chocolate emojis into the comments so we all have something sweet to eat as we deal with all of the crazy true crime that is out there. And until next time, go eat yourself some chocolate.